Hello, everyone. This is a part two of a chapter one lecture. In this session, we continue to discuss the key economic principles that we can apply in managing various social economic issues. And the number four, people respond to incentives. Okay, let me move to our lecture note. Okay, here we go. So people respond to incentives. So what do we really mean by here by incentives? Okay, so incentives, well, there could be many different definitions of incentives, but here my definition of incentives is what? It's just something that induce people, something that induce people to act in a certain way, to behave uh, in a certain way or in a desirable way. Okay, so that's what we call incentives. And a lot of government policies are designed upon this particular economic principle. So they are taking the advantage of what this particular phenomenon. So when people are given certain incentives, then they tend to behave or act in a certain desirable way. Okay, so here are some examples. Added taxes on cigarettes. So when government is levying extra taxes on tobacco products or cigarettes, then, well, it may not be enough to completely stop the people from smoking, but as cigarettes smoking becomes more and more costly, some people may reduce the consumption of tobacco products or smoking. So not everybody may respond to the given incentive, but some people will do respond. A second example of this economic principle here is TOPS for higher education. In Louisiana, a lot of college students are getting TOPS scholarship. So what is this TOPS scholarship for? Now, when people make a decision, okay, if people are indeed, as we discussed earlier, if people are rational and if they are thinking at the margin, then they will compare the benefits and cost of what getting a higher education. So let's say, so benefits of the what college education and the cost of a college education. If the benefits to you of a college education is much greater than cost, then probably what you will voluntarily receive a college education. But for some people, the benefits of a college, getting college education may not be enough, or benefits could be even smaller than the cost of getting college education. So in such a situation, if the government is offering some financial incentives, so if some students can use the TOPS scholarship to pay part of their college tuition, then now what? With the TOPS, the cost will be reduced, and then what? Then finally, the benefits of a college education will be greater than the cost of a college education. So when the government is trying to induce people to receive more higher education, then what? Scholarship or subsidies would certainly work. Another example, cash subsidies and paid parental leaves to fight falling birth rates. Let me use an example from South Korea. In South Korea, birth rates have been falling dramatically. Recent statistics shows that per married couple, birth rate is just about 1.1. That means for each married couple, they tended to have just 1.1 children. Not even enough. The birth rate is high enough to have 2 children per married couple. So then what will happen? With the falling birth rate, the country's population will continue to decline. Then in the long run, it'll be a big, huge impediment to the country's economic growth because they will not have enough labor force. So what the South Korean government did is what? Offering some generous cash subsidies for the married couples who decided to have what? The children. Okay, so that is again an example of what government policy built or designed upon this particular economic principle. Okay, so what lesson do we learn here? The lesson we learn from this, the particular the economic principle is what? When there are changes to benefits and cost, then what? It does affect people's decision making and their behavior. Once again, when there are changes made to the benefits and cost of something, then it'll change people's decision making and their behavior. So we're going to discuss a more concrete example here. You are selling your 2007 Mustang. You have already spent $1,000 on repairs. At the last minute, the transmission dies. You can pay $900 to have it repaired or sell the car as is. In each of the following scenarios, should you have the transmission repaired? To explain. So here we have 2 different scenarios. And in each scenario, we're going to have a different amount of benefit from repairing the transmission. So as the amount of a benefit changes, then what? It does affect your decision or your behavior, your decision whether or not to fix the transmission. So the first scenario, A, Blue Book value, what you could get for the car is $7,500 if transmission is repaired and works. But if you do not fix the transmission, the Blue Book value of your Mustang will be only $6,200. So in this scenario, would you like to fix your transmission or not? So again, this principle is all about how you change your decision making or behavior as the amount of a benefit changes. Okay, so we will analyze in a simple way here. Okay, so first think about the benefits of fixing or repairing the transmission. So the benefits of repairing the transmission. Okay, so once it is fixed, Okay, so once the transmission is fixed, the value of your Mustang is $7,500. Okay. If the transmission is not fixed, the value is $6,200. So now look at the difference. If you have it fixed, the car value will rise to $7,500. But if you do not fix it, the car value will be only $6,200. What's the difference? Additional money that you can command here by repairing, fixing the transmission is what? The difference between the two prices, that is what? $1,300. So that's the benefit of repairing the transmission. Then what is the cost of repairing transmission? Well, the transmission cost of the repair cost is what? It's $900. So now you compare benefit of repairing the transmission and the cost of what? Repairing the transmission. Obviously, benefits are greater than cost. So in this scenario, you will definitely spend additional $900 to fix the transmission, because even if you spend additional $900, extra dollars you're going to receive from the sale of Mustang is what? $1,300, much more than the repair cost. Okay. Now here, the one common mistake a lot of students make in an example like this is what? They include $1,000 in the cost. Now, you have already spent $1,000 on repairs of some other parts. And this cost has already occurred. Whether you fix the transmission or not, the $1,000 that you already spent is not recoverable. In other words, the $1,000 that you spent on some other parts of your car, that cost has been sunk and is totally irrelevant to your decision making at the moment, whether or not to fix the transmission. So $1,000 that you already spent on other parts of the car has nothing to do with your decision making in hand. So you should totally ignore the $1,000 because that's irrelevant to your decision making right now, and the cost is already sunk. Now, let's look at the second scenario. What if Blue Book value is $6,300 when transmissions repaired, and if not, the car value will be $5,500. So in this case, what's the benefit of repairing the transmission? Okay, so the benefit of repairing the transmission is what? Okay, with repair, car value is $6,300. Without repair, the car value is $5,500. So look at the difference. The difference is only $800. So that is what? extra dollars you can command with the repair of transmission. But then what is the cost of repairing the transmission? Well, in the question, the cost of repairing the transmission is $900. So in this case, now you compare benefits of the repair and the cost of the repair. So benefits smaller than the cost. So in this scenario, in the second scenario, you are definitely not gonna repair the transmission. So depending on the changes made to the cost and benefits, here cost remains the same. No matter what the blue book value is, the cost to repair transmission is $900. But in two different scenarios, we changed the amount of a benefit of a repair. So yeah, depending on any changes to the benefits or cost, then what you will end up making different decisions. So that's what number 4 economic principle is all about. So now we have discussed the 4 guiding economic principles in the first category. Now we're going to turn to the second category. In this second category, how people interact, we have another 3 economic principles. So number 5, trade can make everyone better off. So whenever we say trade, probably the first thing that comes to your mind is international trade. Like we have a lot of trade between the US and China, between the US and Canada, between the US and Mexico, and also between the US and many other parts of the world. And some students may say, well, I'm not quite sure about this economic principle. Why? Because it's not common to see that some people in our society are actually worse off after free trade with another country. For example, uh, I don't know exactly when it was. I believe it was about 1994. Yes, back in 1994, the 3 countries signed into an agreement called NAFTA. Probably you have heard of this term many times. So NAFTA. So NAFTA is what? North American Free Trade Agreement. So 3 countries, the US, Canada, and Mexico, signed a treaty to make it easier to have commercial transactions among the 3 countries. Well, unfortunately, after the NAFTA went into effect in 1994, well, some less skilled American workers with inadequate amount of education happened to lose their jobs. Okay, as we opened our market to the relatively inexpensive labor force from Mexico, some less skilled American workers happened to lose their jobs. So certainly, so some people got a lot of a benefit from North American free trade agreement, yet some people got worse off. Then you may wonder, then why do we say trade can make everyone better off? Well, what's implicitly assumed here is that people or 2 parties will voluntarily enter into a transaction or trade. So they voluntarily enter into a transaction or trade only if each party is better off trading with the other. Okay. So there are 2 parties. They will agree to sign a treaty only if each party is better off trading with having free trade with the other. Okay. And now here, so at the national level, when US, Canada, and Mexico had a treaty called the NAFTA, well, all three countries believed they would be better off having such a free trade agreement. But that doesn't necessarily mean every member of what their society is becoming better off. Okay, so it is still more what at an individual level. So let's have a more concrete example. Example one: John is excellent in cooking, but he is hopeless at cleaning. Sarah's superb in cleaning, but she is a greenhorn in the kitchen. So we'll both be better off helping each other. So with the free transaction, once again, here John and Sarah will enter into an agreement voluntarily. Nobody's forced to join or enter into an agreement. Okay. So John is excellent in cooking, so he can cook delicious food in short amount of time, but he's not good at the cleaning at all. So he still does a lousy job, yet it takes a lot of time. On the other hand, the Sarah is really good in cleaning. So she can clean your house or apartment in no time, and she still does a great job. But when she has to cook, well, the food may not be good or delicious, yet she has to waste a lot of, you know, the food, ingredients, and also it takes uh, a lot of time. So, if two people voluntarily enter into an agreement, so for example, okay, John will cook for both himself and Sarah, and the Sarah will clean for herself and John. Then what? Both John and Sarah will be able to save a lot of time, yet each of them will enjoy delicious food, cooking, and cleaner the housing. Okay, so when two parties enter into an agreement voluntarily, the capitalizing on the strengths they have, then what? Both could be better off through voluntary transaction or trade. Second example, in what countries were your clothes made and why? Now, if you look at the whatever clothes you put on right now and then look at the label, then probably the chances are the clothes you are wearing right now the were probably produced and manufactured what outside the United States. So we can answer the second example, this question using the same economic reasoning that we used in the first example, John and Sarah. In the previous example, we learned that John and Sarah are better off specializing in what they are good at and trading with each other. So John specializes in cooking and Sarah does in cleaning. In much the same way, countries could be better off specializing in what they have a comparative advantage in. Okay. In they specialize in what they have what relative strength in. So obviously, America has advanced technology and equipment. So we can focus on high valued, high-end products and services. On the other hand, for example, Bangladesh is lacking in well-educated labor force and technology. But Bangladesh does have an inexpensive, abundant, inexpensive labor force readily available. So America, the United States, can focus on the production of what? High valued, high end, or high tech products or services. Yet Bangladesh could not produce such high end products, yet they take advantage of their abundant, inexpensive labor force and they produce a lot of clothes. As a matter of fact, Bangladesh has the huge textile industry. Actually, the textile industry of Bangladesh is the largest in the whole world. So we buy relatively cheap clothes manufactured in Bangladesh, and then what? That'll free up a lot of valuable time for American workers, so we can focus on the production of the high-end products, goods or services. And so we can use our scarce, limited, valuable time for the production of more valuable goods and services. Yet in Bangladesh, they could deal with avail themselves of what abundant, inexpensive labor force. Yet through trade, they can enjoy high-tech, high-end products manufactured in America. So both countries will be better off through a voluntary trade or transaction. Okay, so that's what number 5 economic principle is all about. Okay. All right. Number 6, markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. So here, markets, what we mean by markets here, so what we mean by markets is what? Actually, it's a free market economy. Now, when you read this particular economic principle, I would like to bring your attention to this particular word. It says usually. What it means is what? Not always. Okay, we're going to come back to this in a second. There are two distinct market system, economic system. One is what? A centrally planned economy. The other is free market economy. Matter of fact, no country has either a pure centrally planned economy or pure free market economy. Even in the United States, even though we say we have a free market economy, but we still have what? A strong presence of what? Public sector, government in our economy. So we should say all economies, all countries have what? So-called mixed economy. Some portion of its economy is what? The centrally planned, and the rest of the economy is what? Free market economy. Okay. But here, for a stark contrast, we're going to just compare a centrally planned economy and the free market economy. First, in a centrally planned economy, decisions are made typically by its central government. That's what we mean by centralized decisions. A lot of decisions are made by a few government officials on behalf of what? Millions of what? Private citizens. Probably you would remember seeing some old pictures from the Soviet Union. Okay, that was before Russia today. A lot of people were lining up in front of a general store to, to buy a loaf of bread or sugar or some other necessities. But a lot of people spent so much time in line just to find out the store shelves were empty. Why did that happen? As I said earlier, a few government officials were making important decisions on behalf of millions of other people. So they did not know exactly how much bread people wanted to consume, how much sugar people needed to have. So that's the major drawback of what the centralized decision making. Also, in a centrally planned economy, most goods and services are produced by state-run enterprises. It's not private businesses. These enterprises are owned and managed by the central government or sometimes the local government. And those enterprises were run using the government dollars budget. So managers of a state-run enterprises are not concerned about making profits because they don't have to take any risk. And also managers of a state-run enterprises do not have enough incentive to reduce the cost of production, to improve the quality of the products, or to introduce innovations into marketplace. Because even if they make some profits, they do not share that profit. It's just that it goes back to the government. But on the other hand, in a free market economy, even though we still have what significant presence of the government in our economy, most decisions are made by individuals. Decisions are made by individual consumers, individual business owners. They decide how much of what product they're going to consume. And the business managers, well, of course, are privately owned and managed businesses. Managers decide how much of what product they're going to produce and sell. They will produce more of a product when it is in high demand, and that they will reduce the production of a good if it is not in high demand. So a lot of decisions are made by individuals. That's what we mean by decentralized decisions. Okay? And they also have a strong incentive to reduce cost and improve the quality of the products. Why? If they could reduce the cost, in other words, if they could produce the same amount of products at a lower cost, then what? They're going to have what? Bigger profit. And they will be better off because they are entitled to the profits they make. Also, they have a strong incentive to introduce the innovations in the market. Why? With the innovative products, they could sell more and that they could possibly make more profit. So, in free market economy, all individuals, whether they are producers or consumers, they are all motivated by their self-interest. If you are a consumer, you want to buy the what? You want to spend your money to maximize your satisfaction. And if you are a producer, then you would like to produce a product in a way to maximize your profit. Yet, in a free market economy, even if decisions are made by millions of what? Individuals, yet their decisions are all guided. Their self-interests are still guided by invisible hands. Here, invisible hands are the metaphor for the market forces. Okay. For example, the more of a product that people try to consume, then what? The higher the price of the product will be. As people demand more and more of a certain product, then what? The price of such a product is likely to rise. So eventually, their self-interest will be a little reduced, because only those who can afford to pay higher price will be able to consume such a product. And if your income is not high enough, then what? Probably, even if you like a certain product, then what? You're going to have to cut your consumption of such a product. So in a centrally planned economy, decisions were made by central government, centralized decisions, and many businesses, enterprises were owned and managed by the state government, so they didn't have enough incentive to reduce cost, improve quality, or introduce innovations. But on the other hand, free market economy, decisions are primarily made by individuals. So it's just decentralized decisions, and both producers or sellers and buyers are what trying to maximize what their satisfaction or profits, and that, simply put, their actions behavior is what guided by self-interest. But it doesn't mean they have a free reign. Yet they can make their own decisions in pursuit of their self-interest, but eventually what? The action, behavior will be restrained by invisible hands, the market forces. Okay. And then now let's turn to that particular point I made earlier. So free market economy is a good way to organize economic activity, but not always. Okay. All right. So here I compared free market economy with a centrally planned economy, like an old Soviet Union's economy. Yet we can find strong evidence from real data. If you compare the standard of living, I mean, here we are not talking about spiritual well-being, okay? We are talking about basically material well-being. If you compare the standard of living across many countries with the different economic systems, okay? I said earlier, no countries have a pure free market system or completely centrally planned economy. All countries have now a mixed economy. Portion of its economy is what free market system, and the portion of its economy also centrally planned. But when we say U.S. is what free market economy, it means the most of our economy is what the free market system is accounting for the most of our economy. Okay, so even though every country has a mixed economy, but the portions of a free market economy and the centrally planned economy, they are all different. So across different economic system, if you compare the standard of living, then there is a very compelling evidence that a free market economy is doing better. Free market economy is preferable to a centrally planned or state-controlled economy. If you just compare the average income per person across different economic systems, then what? You can easily identify that the income per person is much higher in a free market economy than in a centrally planned economy. Okay. All right. So then why do we say markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity? Not always. Okay. So here, what is it? Why is it usually, not always? Okay. Well, unfortunately, even though free market system has a lot of what the merits relative to centrally planned economy, free market economy also has its own problem. That is what we call market failure. Okay, so first, what is market failure? So when market outcomes are less than desirable, there is market failure. So what do we mean by here? The outcomes that are less than desirable. So that means sometimes what market economy, free market economy produces too much of a good or too little of a good. Whenever it happens, then we say, hey, market outcomes are less than satisfactory or ideal. So what we say there is market failure. Well, you can easily find a lot of examples. Well, in free market system, we respect entrepreneurship. They take chance in hopes of making some profit. But sometimes businesses are what? Too profit oriented. Or sometimes their economic activities are too uh, environmentally destructive. Okay. So when there is not enough regulation or when there is not enough government oversight, some free businesses, free market economy, some private businesses tend to produce too much of a good, then it is optimal. Or sometimes the free market system produces too little of something. For example, if there wasn't no restrictions, no regulations, suppose if there was no government agency like EPA, then some the enterprises, privately owned businesses would not really care much about what all the damages done to our environment because they are not taking full responsibility or they are taking no responsibility at all. So what? They will just go after profits they make and they end up producing too much of what? The chemical products, for example. Or, well, everybody knows that education is what? It's not really anything profitable. So if we just what? Rely on the free market system for higher education, for example, then do you think we're going to have a sufficient amount of a higher education available? Probably not. So without government presence, then sometimes market fails, free market economy fails to produce an adequate or an optimal amount of what good or service. Whenever that happens, we say there exists market failure. So that means, although it is not perfect, yes, the market system works very well most of the time, but sometimes it does fail to deliver a desirable outcome. So it is not 100% perfect. That's why we say markets are not always. Markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. Okay. All right. So now we're going to turn to our final economic principle in chapter 1. Number 7, governments can sometimes improve market outcomes. Well, in the previous economic principle, what did we say? Markets are a good way to organize economic activity, but only usually, not always. So whenever there is market failure, then what? Government may come to the rescue. So we have to turn to the government to fix the problem. So markets sometimes fails. So when that happens, we turn to the government. That's why we say government can sometimes, not always, when market fails, government may come to the rescue and improve the market outcome. Okay. So example 1. Government sometimes interferes with the market economy to promote efficiency and equality. Okay. So in the previous example, principle, we learned that in free market system, individuals are motivated by their self-interest, and their self-interest are guided by invisible hand, market forces. Although invisible hand, free market system, market forces allocate scarce resources efficiently most of the time, individuals' self-interest are not always in line with our social interest. In other words, when people are pursuing their self-interest, the outcome is not always consistent with what? The interest of our society. That's when market failure occurs. For example, a good example here is what? Carbon emission. Suppose there was no government regulation, there's no government agency like EPA, then can we really rely on the self-restraint of businesses to resolve or mitigate the air pollution problems? Well, some business firms may be able to fix the problem out of the goodness of their heart. But is this something we can always rely upon? Probably not. Okay. And now let's focus on this particular example. Government sometimes interferes with the market economy to promote efficiency and equality. Now here, one major problem that we are dealing with right now is what? Ever widening gap between haves and have-nots. Okay. So a widening gap between the haves and the have-nots. Okay. Well, free market system is what? Promoting efficiency mainly. When there's no government presence, free market system is what? As we said earlier, the people are pursuing their self-interest, and their self-interest are guided by invisible hand market forces. Okay. So in free market system, when people are pursuing their self-interest, then what? We value efficiency above equality. And private businesses will do whatever it takes to make more profit. Okay. And then as a result, what's so-called, it's a cliche, but the rich get richer, the poor get poorer. And that's one example of the market failure. Our free market system cannot fix this problem. But as we discussed uh, earlier, we needed to balance efficiency and equality. In other words, we needed to help businesses uh, what, to take a risk and bring innovations into marketplace. So we needed to provide such incentive to private businesses. On the other hand, we also needed to make sure that our economic prosperity, the outcome of economic prosperity, is shared equally. What equally might be a too strong word, in a fair way. The outcome of economic prosperity is shared in a fair way among the members of our society. The market itself cannot fix this problem. So that's why the government is interfering with the free market economy. And then what? Collect more taxes from rich or wealthy Americans and transfer those tax dollars to low or middle income families. Okay. So that's why we see a lot of taxes. Okay. Also, well, for example, like a higher education cannot compete against what private businesses because education is not something highly profitable. So if we rely completely upon free market system, then what? Probably much less than the ideal amount of resources will be devoted to higher education. So that's why government is intervening in our economy and offering a lot of what, for example, subsidies for higher education. And also like environmental, the pollution. Well, free market system itself is not fixing that problem by itself. So the government is they're having a lot of regulations in place to protect our environment. So market free market system works pretty well most of the time, but it is not perfect. So whenever it fails to deliver an ideal, desirable outcome, we say there exists a market failure. So to fix that market failure, so now what? We turn to the government. So government comes to the rescue and tries to improve the failed market outcomes. But that doesn't mean government's efforts always work. Well, government may interfere with the free market economy with a good intent to improve the market outcomes. Sometimes such efforts will fail. So whenever the government's efforts result in what, again, less than ideal outcomes, then we say there exists what, government failure. So that means what? Government's intervention results in less than ideal outcome. In other words, rather than improving the market outcome, the outcome gets even worse. Then we say there exists government failure. So that's why we say government can sometimes improve market outcomes, not always. Okay. Now, another example. The number of chickens slaughtered, processed, is far greater than the number of whales killed. But are we ever concerned about the extinction of chickens? Okay. First, do you know that on a typical Super Bowl Sunday, Americans are consuming an obscene number of what? exorbitant number of the chicken wings. For example, about 2 years ago, on the Super Bowl Sunday, Americans consumed whopping 1.4 billion chicken wings. So each chicken has 2 wings. So that means 700 million chickens were consumed on the Super Bowl day. Last year, it was about 1.1 billion chicken wings. Okay. Still more than 500 million chickens were slaughtered or consumed. Okay. So we consume so many chickens every year, but we are never concerned about the extinction of chickens. I cannot imagine Americans are consuming any whale meat. There could be some. We know Japanese are known for consuming whale meat, but that's pretty uncommon in Western society. So we are not consuming many whales at all, yet we are worried about the extinction of whales. Why? Well, you may say, well, chickens are relatively easy to reproduce. On the other hand, it's really hard to reproduce the certain species of whales. Well, that is also quite true. But we try to come up with an answer from an economist viewpoint here. Now let's go back the number 6 economic principle. Markets are usually a good way to organize economic activity. In free market system, people are pursuing their self-interest. They are making a lot of decisions based upon their self-interest. And their self-interest are guided by market forces. Okay. Now, when it comes to the reproduction of a chicken, well, farmers can reproduce chickens. But if you just put aside the technical issues here, okay, but focus on economic incentives here. Well, if there's enough market demand for chickens, that means what? The price of a chicken will be high enough, profitably high enough. And then farmers will have a great incentive to reproduce the chickens. Why? If they could reproduce a lot of chickens and sell them, then what? At the reasonable market price of a chicken, so they can make reasonable amount of a profit. And that they are entitled to that profit. They earned that money, so that's their profit. But however, if we use all of our knowledge or technology available today to help to reproduce certain species of whales, who's sharing? Who is entitled to such a profit? It's highly debatable. So the point I'm trying to make here is what? Even in free market economy, if we fail to enforce, protect the property right, then it may not work. So we consume so many chickens every year, yet we seldom worry about the extinction of a chicken. Why? Chickens, the property right on chickens are well defined and protected. But when it comes to whales, there may not be any property right, or even if there is some property right, but it is what? Very poorly, ill-defined property right. In other words, you do something about it, and then there are some positive outcomes. But if if property right is not well defined, then what? You cannot share or enjoy the benefit. Okay, so that's why, from an economist viewpoint, how to answer this question? Why are we the we are concerned about the extinction of whale, but we never worry about the extinction of chicken, even though we consume so many chickens every year? Because on chicken, property rights is well defined, so what? People can pursue their self-interest. But that is not quite true for whales. This will conclude our the part 2 of chapter 1 lecture. And so I will meet you again in another session. Thank you for watching this lecture.